following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here, and very pleased to also be joined by an old friend, Cheryl Rosenthal from the Oshkosh Area Humane Society is here, and we're going to be talking about a couple of primary topics tonight. We're going to be talking about spaying and neutering, as well as puppy mills, and then if we have time left over, we'll be getting into other topics as well. So thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me again.
It's always fun to have you guys on. You know, pets are my passion.
Yeah, pets are your passion. I know that.
And,
I know
so
that.
I always enjoy
but there's so
talking.
much that, so much information that we want to get out, and but we don't want to bore people to tears either. So.
Right. But speaking of getting out information, I keep, every time you guys are on, I keep wanting to, I'm trying to remind myself, ask them about their show, and I always forget, and then we run out of time. And but you've got your own show on
yes,
cable
we do.
access. It's called Happy Tales.
Yes.
When does it run? When does it air?
Oh, sure. I knew you'd ask me that, and I don't know.
You don't know. Well, they can check. They can go to ocms.org.
I think it's on Sunday afternoons.
They can look at the program
but
schedule.
it's called Happy Tales.
Yep.
And Tales is T-A-I-L-S, Happy Tales. And we've been doing the show for over 3 years. And we get
Has it been 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We get a lot of wonderful responses to it. We did a show on house training for dogs. We got a couple people from New York City contacting us about, oh, thank you for your show. You taught us how to house train our puppy in this high-rise that we're living in. And so that was really pretty cool.
How did they happen to see it there?
Well, all of our shows are also put on YouTube.
Okay.
And so we have our shows on YouTube, plus I always have a link on our website. Mm-hmm. And I got to do a show regarding litter boxes, and I was teased that it was kind of like a cooking show because I had all these litter boxes and different kinds of litter and how to, the different scoops. And
you don't want to eat off those, though.
No, you don't want to eat off of those. But it just, some really valuable information, and I think one of the things I like about our show is it's really down to earth every day. And then we do have guests. We've had some animal behaviorists come in. We've had some small mammal experts come in. We had one of the subjects that we're talking about tonight. We had the lady from that was instrumental in the No More Puppy Mills, No More Wisconsin Puppy Mills, their website and the work that they're doing to get that, or what they did to get that passed. So we have a nice variety on our show.
Yeah,
and so it's a lot of fun, and I'm amazed at how many people, recognize me in the grocery store and say, "I see you on TV." and we do encourage, that if you like our show and you want to see a particular subject covered, email me and tell me, "Oh, talk about this. We want to learn about this." And of course, we always have to have some animals on there, so because it's always more fun to watch the animals. So.
Well, one of our dogs certainly thinks so. We've got, of the 3 dogs, we've got one who loves to watch TV, and especially, we figured this out. She likes cartoons because of the bright colors, and she likes animal shows, of course. And so whenever Happy Tales is on, and I say, look, and I point to the TV, if there's an animal, she just sits there and she watches it.
Isn't that awesome?
You've got animal fans as well.
Yes, we do, because I also had one of our adopters send me a picture of his cat watching the television, and it's on television is a close-up of Joni and I. So I knew that he really wasn't just pulling our leg, that the cat was watching TV. So yes, it's fun to have that show.
Absolutely. Well, good. Well, so if you're interested in seeing Happy Tales, and certainly we hope you are, check it out. As Cheryl said, she's not sure of the times, but pull up the OCMS website, and there's always a program schedule on there, and you can find out when it airs and check it out. So now, how often do you have a new show come on?
Once a month.
Once a month.
Once a
okay.
month.
So if they don't catch it the first time it airs, they can
Right.
probably catch it.
Airs
Does it
several
start the
times.
new month?
Yes.
Like on November 1st,
Yes, November 1st we'll have a new show.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So they still have time to catch the October show, and then a new show will. In fact, we just filmed our next show for
Okay.
November.
What's it on?
The next show that we're doing is Meet the Staff.
Okay.
And we decided to do a Meet Your Staff because here again, being an animal shelter, a lot of people have maybe wonder what are the credentials that we have. I mean, why do we say what we do? Where do we get our information? What gives us credibility? And so we had each of our staff come in, or the majority of our staff come in and talk about what kind of training we had, how long we've been there, what we like about our job, what has impacted us the most in our job. And it was very eye-opening to me because I didn't realize that some of our staff have been there so long. And we have a very knowledgeable staff. And hopefully this will give people in the community the opportunity to understand that when we talk to people about dog training, or we talk to them about litter box training, or we talk to them the best way to introduce a cat to a household that has other cats, these are not things that Joni and our staff just make up. These are things that we have learned going through seminars and working with and studying under other animal experts, the professionals.
Absolutely.
So by going to those seminars and the workshops, they've helped us become the experts and the people that, and I'm very pleased with our staff that when somebody comes to us with a behavior question, something that we don't know, we don't try to wing it. We say, you know what, that's a great question. I bet we can find somebody that can help you. Yeah. And we try to be an ultimate resource center for our community when it comes to pet care.
Sure. And the other thing is, as far as seeing other shows, if someone does miss a show, like you said, it's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
What would they'd go to youtube.com and what would they enter into the search bar there?
Well, even easier than that, they can just go to our website.
Okay.
www.oahs.
We've been putting, or we'll be putting it up.
Okay. And then there's always a YouTube program on our homepage.
Okay.
And if you click on that, it'll take you right to the YouTube page, and then it will have all the other ones there for you to select from.
Wow, that's really slick.
So yeah,
okay.
so you can check them out, and it's fun for me to go back because they're all on there. One of our first shows was a tour. Another show was puppy club, our puppy club that we do. So hopefully giving people a better insight as to what the animal shelter and the Humane Society is all about and what we do there.
Sure. Well, one of the things you do is you take in animals that obviously don't have homes.
Right. And we seem to see our fair share of them.
Yep.
And which brings us to the subject of spaying and neutering. And
yes.
Cheryl, I feel I've been at the shelter 15 years and it seems it's never ending. When I started at the shelter, I think the Humane Society of the United States, the numbers were something like 10 to 12 million animals enter animal shelters every year, and 7,000 to 8,000 are euthanized. And I like it now when I go to the HSUS website, Humane Society of the United States. I hate it when people talk in letters and don't say what they mean. There are between 6 and 8 million animals now that enter humane societies across our nation, and about half of those end up being euthanized.
Yeah, I pulled some figures in preparation for this show. I went to both the Humane Society of the United States as well as American Humane. American Humane, their figure is approximately 3.7 million animals are euthanized at shelters. Whatever figure you use, it's
3 million,
ridiculous.
4 million,
It's
it
3
is.
million too many.
It's ridiculous. And I'm going to give you an example. In September of this year, as of September 1st, the Oshkosh Area Humane Society had 222 cats. And we did a promotion because we thought, my gosh, we got to do something with all the cats we have. So it was kind of bizarre. We went out on a limb. We did 222 cats for 22 cents for 22 days. So for 22 days, we had our adoption fee at 22 cents. And you still had to go through the same procedure. You know, people had to be, they had to apply and be approved. We adopted out in the month of September 145 cats. Now, isn't that awesome? 225 cats, we got 145 of them out. But what people don't often think about is as quickly as we're trying to get these cats adopted, during that same time period, we took in 125. So when people say to those of us that work at animal shelters, there is not a pet overpopulation problem, they need to come to their local shelter because there's just too many animals. And part of that problem could be that less than 25% of the animals that are in homes come from animal shelters. The majority of people, Cheryl, are getting their pets from ads in the paper, swap meets, Craigslist, breeders, neighbor down the street, a relative.
And puppy mills, which we're going to talk about later,
which we're going to talk about. But the sad truth is that a lot of these animals, when they're placed this way, a lot of those animals are not spayed and neutered, and so they continue breeding, and eventually some of those animals end up at animal shelters. Yep. And I guess people don't think that they're part of the problem. Let's say, for example, I have a dog, or I have a cat, and it's a wonderful cat. So, and my cat scoots outside, and she's not fixed, and she gets pregnant. Well, I give all my kittens away. I found homes for all mine. I'm not adding to the pet overpopulation problem.
But they are.
But they are, because I didn't make sure that they were spayed or neutered before they left. And the sad thing is if I gave them away, or even if I sold them for $5, how do I know that at some time or another they're not going to end up at an animal shelter? Because unfortunately, our population sees animals as disposable. When they get tired of them, they can't afford them anymore, they don't like the behavior that they're exhibiting, one of two things will happen. The animal will either be taken to a humane society, or they'll just put them outside. And thus a lot of the stray cats that we get in.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of people in our community and throughout the United States that would spay and neuter their pets. I think some of it is cost. Cost is a deterrent. And then when you get into the cost, sometimes everybody says, well, the answer to that is low-cost spay neuter. Well, there's another stumbling block there, because when you look, and the Humane Society of the United States again did a study on this, that there's a reservation for people. There has to be a certain amount of trust. And when it comes to trust, people trust their own veterinarian, or they trust a veterinarian in their community. And then next in line would be their humane society. The next would be their local humane or their animal shelter. And then when it comes down to the mobile clinics and or the low-cost spay neuter, their level of trust is a little less, because sometimes people have a hard time equating high volume with quality. And we have recently partnered with, it's an organization called Shelter from the Storm. Yeah,
and I want to talk about, I don't want to get too far ahead.
Okay.
Because that gets into the low cost thing.
Okay.
Let's just talk a little bit about, this why people should spay and neuter. I mean, obviously this pet overpopulation is,
well,
is
I can spout you all the reasons, and the study that the Humane Society of the United States did, some of those reasons people don't see as priorities.
Right.
And what those are is your pet will live a longer, healthier life, less chances of getting some kinds of cancers, testicular cancer, mammary cancer, ovarian cancer, those can be eliminated. Your pet is going to be easier to train. Dogs that have been neutered, especially males, are less likely to become aggressive and bite. Your pet is less likely to roam. They're easier to train. They're more attentive. But the primary reason for spaying and neutering is that if everybody would spay and neuter their pets, there would be less euthanasia of pets.
Well, and you talked before, Cheryl, about how if someone allows their own pet to have a litter of kittens or a litter of puppies, and they find homes for all those, they think, well, like you said, they're not contributing to the pet overpopulation.
Right.
Because you said that one of them will eventually end up in the shelter, that's contributing to the problem. But also, if you've got a litter of 5 puppies and you find a home for each one of those 5 puppies, that is 5 less homes that can be used for
Right.
5 dogs or puppies that are already in a shelter or a rescue group.
Right,
So you've
exactly.
taken 5 good homes away,
Right.
and those 5 animals that are in a shelter or a rescue group
Right.
are still sitting
Right,
there.
and that's what I would hope that people would start to think about is think about all the animals that don't have homes, and let's make sure that they have homes before we are breeding more animals. Now I understand there's going to be people that they're looking for a particular type of a pet, and they may go here again. We're going to jump ahead to a breeder. There'll always be some of that need there. But when those statistics come out, where 6 to 8 million animals are entering animal shelters, where are those 6 to 8 million? There shouldn't be 6 to 8 million animals
Right.
entering animal shelters to begin with.
Yeah.
To me, that's a red flag that there are not enough homes for these animals, and we need to really start spaying and neutering and come up with ways that we can help people who want to have their animals spayed and neutered so that they can get their pets spayed and neutered. And we've tried our best. We've had several grants that have been approved in the past where we've tried to do some spaying and neutering of certain breeds of dogs. We've got a grant at one time where a portion of it could be used primarily for shelter animals, and then the other half of it could be used for people in the community. And anything that we can do to cut down on the pet overpopulation. But the community has to do their part too. It's like everything in life. One organization, one person cannot take this on and do it alone. Everybody has to kind of jump on that bandwagon and say, you know what, I think I need to have my pet spayed or neutered. And to look at the lives that it can save. As a life-saving shelter, that's what we see it as. Nobody likes to think of no more puppies and kittens. I'm sitting here, I love puppies and kittens, but it breaks my heart to think about puppies and kittens that will never have a home because there's too many of them.
Well, and just because people spay and neuter their pets, there will always be responsible breeders out there, and there will always be some puppies and kittens. It's not like, we're going to make all these animals extinct.
Right, we're not. They're not going to disappear.
Exactly. That's just not going to happen. On TV, you hear, you see this from time to time. You hear people talking about this, especially where it's I don't want to sound sexist, but that's what you see on TV quite frequently, is a man not wanting to neuter his
They tie their
male
sexuality
dog.
to their dog.
Exactly. Talk a little bit about that, because I understand where they're coming from, but it's not a really good, justified reason for not neutering your dog.
Animals don't have relationships the way people do.
Right.
They don't have an attachment. For animals, when they breed, it's more of an instinct, and it's a very strong instinct. And when you have an animal spayed or neutered, you're not changing their personality, you're not changing who they are. What you're doing is you're taking away that oh, I need to mate mentality. Because that's what it is. Because, when you have a female in heat, and you have an intact male within a mile of her, he is going to be crazy to get to her. And would you really want to live like that if you were a human? No. And so I really think, again, people need to look at it as they're really doing their pet a disservice by not having them neutered. And it's not going to make your dog, I have 3 male dogs. They're all neutered, and they lift their leg, they mark their territory,
Yep.
and they have, they're still macho, dogs. They're not, hiding in the corner like little wusses.
Yep.
So it doesn't change. But here again, it's one of those stereotypes that people need to, it's one of those myths.
Yep.
And people, sometimes you just have to get over it.
Well, and we're trying to dispel some of the myths tonight. One of the myths is, well, wouldn't it be okay to just, let my animal do what comes naturally to it?
Oh, because it's natural. Don't spay
Yes.
or neuter because it's natural. Is it natural to kill 4 million animals a year?
Or more.
Yeah. Do we want to think about animals having offspring, only that we have to end their life? That to me is not natural. If you really want to get technical, it's really not natural. Some of the animals that we keep as pets. Is that natural? So there's a lot of argument as to what's wrong or right, or not. We need to spay and neuter, so that there aren't so many animals.
Right. There's so many different schools of thought, Cheryl, on when the best time to spay or neuter is. I've heard as early as 6 months or younger in some cases. Then you hear other people who say, well, you should wait until they're at least 6 months or older. In the case of a female, she should go through 1 heat cycle. I've never heard anything, males obviously don't have a heat cycle, but the equivalent of that, I've never heard that with a male. But when really is a good time or the best time?
As soon as you can get it done. I can tell you
even vets disagree on when the right time is.
There are veterinarians who do what we call early spay neuters at our shelter. An early spay neuter for kittens, they must be 2 months or 2 pounds, and then they can be spayed or neutered. There have been studies. Early spay neuters have been done for several years. I don't know exactly how many, but we've been in our building almost 6 years, and I know that they were being done before then. Veterinarians that have performed these early spay neuters, there has been some controversy that some veterinarians feel that when you do them that early, there's a possibility that they're not developed enough, that they could end up with some urinary tract problems or growth problems. But from a shelter standpoint, the advantage of having those animals spayed and neutered before they go out outweighs the few that may have problems later on. If you ask the majority of veterinarians, I believe the majority of them still feel 6 months is a good time period to have their animals spayed and neutered. And I personally would always defer to the veterinarian, but I know that at our shelter we have area veterinarians who come and do the early spays and neuters because it's so important to us that we're not adding to the pet overpopulation. And again, we don't want to limit, we're not, we still want this to be, it's still a quality surgery. I don't want people to think, well, you do them that early, it's any different. It's the same, and I'm so amazed when I see these animals, these little ones that have been spayed and neutered. After they come out of the anesthesia, they're back playing and eating, and they don't even know that anything ever happened. And they don't have to go through that again. And we don't have to worry that we're adding to the pet overpopulation. And people don't, it's difficult sometimes for people to, subject their pet to a surgery that they may think is really unnecessary. Again, there are some people that think, well, my cat never gets outside, so I don't need to have it done. Or I always have my dog under control. So I don't need to have that done. And there's a lot of people that just feel that, well, it's just never going to happen. But unfortunately, in some cases, it does happen. And those are the oopses,
Yep.
you know, that are adding to that pet overpopulation problem. Or there are people, again, that, you know, my pet is too young or my pet is too old. And again, in the case of age, if you have an older pet, of course, I would defer again to the veterinarian who knows the health
Sure.
status of that animal, whether or not, I know from my own experience, my sister had her cat spayed at the age of 13,
Wow.
and she did just fine. You know, so what is right? That's why you need to consult with your veterinarian. But I do know that there are some veterinarians and those that volunteer at the Humane Society. At the shelter, they will do the, you know, the young spays and neuters.
Okay. What about the arguments, Cheryl, of, well, you know, shouldn't I let my female have one litter of kittens or puppies and then have her
Yeah.
fixed? And also parents who say, oh, it'd be so wonderful to have little Johnny and little
Oh,
Susie
yes.
experience the miracle of birth.
And
Talk
wouldn't
to
it-
us about those
and
things.
how about having little Mary and Johnny experience the miracle of death? Simply put, animals usually have their puppies, you know, they're going to go off and hide. Puppies and kittens, they're going to go and hide. It may happen in the middle of the night or early in the morning. What is your response going to be if the animal is having some type of difficulty in giving birth? You know, I just, you know, it's a nice idea, but I don't really think that it's all that practical.
Well, and you know, first of all, an animal is probably going to be healthier if it never sexually matures,
Right.
As you talked about before.
like the dog going through a first heat cycle.
Yep.
It's like, why would
or
you
having one litter
Right.
before it gets
right? Why
you know, fixed.
Why would you want to put your animal through that stress?
Yep. Well, and in the case of parents who want their kids to experience, you know, the miracle of birth, the other good answer, I think, is a good lesson to teach the children is about responsible pet ownership.
Right.
And what this really means.
Right.
You know, and part of that means spaying and neutering your pets.
And I you know, and there are shows that you can show your children the miracle of birth.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need to necessarily, you know, witness it firsthand.
I don't know that I've ever witnessed it firsthand, and I think I'm just fine, and I'm proud to say I'm a responsible pet owner.
There you
go. Okay, let's see. Other questions? Changing their personality. You did touch on this before. You know, it doesn't change their personality. I
No.
mean, I can speak to that. Every
Well,
one
it
of my
may make
pets has
them a little
always been
bit more
spayed or-
mellow. you
Well,
know.
yeah, but not. I mean, not
Not
where
to
it's a
the point-
dramatic change.
Yeah, not to the
you
point
know.
where, you know, my dog used to be real energetic and want to run 5 miles, and now it's real lethargic. There is something with the, one of the things that I still hear is, you know, well, I had my cat spayed or I had my dog neutered and he got fat.
Yeah.
Well, if you notice, even with humans, as we get older and our bodies change and we go through we're no longer at that reproduction stage, it's easier for the pounds to go on. And it's harder for the pounds to come off. Well, the same thing happens to your pet. When you spay or neuter your pet, there's a change in their metabolism. And so we may have to feed them less, but it still comes down to the same thing. They're overweight or gaining weight because one of two things. They're getting more food than what they need, or they're not getting enough exercise. And I think exercise for our pets is one of the biggest things that pet owners have a problem keeping up with because our lifestyles are so hectic. And it's difficult. You work, you know, 40 hours a week, and then you take the kids to the soccer game and to scouts and all these other things, and then besides that, you should be, you know, exercising the dog. And it's sometimes more than what people can fit into their busy schedules.
Well, and this idea of, well, if they do have a litter of kittens or a litter of puppies and they don't get rid of all of them, the shelter is there. The shelter is there
shelter
to
will
take
take
the
them.
excess. You know, the shelter may not always be able to take them.
Right.
Depending on the type of shelter that it is. You know, no-kill shelters where they never euthanize under any circumstances. What people need to understand about those is,
Right.
while they're very good because they don't euthanize any animal, they also, when they're full, and they will turn you away.
Right. Well, but there's different types of no-kill.
Well, the ones I'm thinking of,
yeah.
they will turn you away if
Right.
they have no
Oh, right.
more space.
But they'll turn you away if they have no more space. You know, so there's the no-kills, but then there's also the no-kills that will only accept animals that are 100% adoptable. You know, they pick and choose who they can take. Or the ones that turn them away, and the shelters, the no-kills that turn animals away, what happens to those animals? You know, they're either let loose or they go to what we call a full admissions shelter where they may possibly be euthanized upon arrival.
Yep.
And that brings me back to, I want people to understand that we are a life-saving shelter and explain what that means.
Sure.
We still euthanize animals at our shelter for temperament, for behavior, because we do have a responsibility to the community not to place an animal that would put anyone in the community at risk. So in those instances, we would still end the life of an animal. But in life-saving, we refuse to euthanize any animal due to lack of space. And that means that any animal that is adoptable will be given whatever time it needs to be placed. And in order to do that, like when we had the 222 cats, we rely on foster homes and the community for foster homes and for adoption, because we cannot be a life-saving shelter if we don't have the support of the entire community.
I want to talk about dogs that people use as for protection or as a guard dog. And again, this goes back to their personality. I use my dog as a guard dog and the protector of my home, and if I have it spayed or neutered, it's going to lose its ability to be that protector. And
Don't come to my house.
or mine either, because not that we have aggressive dogs, but our male dogs are neutered, and they're just, personally, I can't notice a difference in any of my dogs once they were fixed. I just can't.
Right. Right.
And
well, I can tell you, when you get into police dogs, those dogs are not neutered, so that they have a higher aggression level. I don't know if I want to call it aggression, but they're more readily aroused because they have a job to do.
They have a job to do. Yeah.
But to have a guard dog, oftentimes just the sound of a dog barking or the presence of a large dog is enough to put most burglars or people off. So, having a guard dog, then maybe you should have the insurance that goes with it.
Yeah.
Because you're asking for trouble, having, training your dog in that respect. I mean, here again, just to have a dog, I know that my dogs don't bark. You could come to my house and pound on the door all you wanted, and my dogs would not bark. But if you try to come in my house, my dogs just sit there and stare at you. And they're pretty intimidating. I mean, 85 and 75 pounds, and they just sit there and look at you like, are you going to walk in on that?
I wouldn't.
Yeah, they're not growling, they're not barking, but they're not moving.
And you don't know what they're going to do. So
Right. Well, I know what they're going to do.
Well, right, but someone walking in, they're
Right.
not going to know what they're going to do.
They don't know what they're going
Right.
to do. And so, here again, the need for a guard dog in most family homes, I don't see the purpose.
Right, right.
Especially an unneutered. And when we talk about that, an unneutered male, I believe they're 80 or 90% more likely to bite.
What about animals who mark in various places in the house? If they are then spayed or neutered, will that become less or be eliminated altogether?
In cats, a spraying problem can be 90% of spraying problems can be eliminated by having a cat neutered. spayed or neutered, because this is a good opportunity for me to let people know that both male and female cats spray. There's this myth out there that only the males spray. The poor boys get a bad rap. They get a bad rap. Only both cats can spray. 90% of that spraying can be corrected by having them spayed and neutered. If you take, let's say, a 5-year-old cat off the street who's been having his way with the girls, and you want to make him a house cat, you have a 90% chance that you can stop his marking behavior. Now, there's still that 10% chance that he will still mark territory. There are other things that can make that cat start marking territory, such as other animals coming up to the door or being in the area that the cat can sense his territory is being threatened. Unclean litter boxes, not enough litter boxes that aren't in a good location, stress, changes in the household. Maybe somebody's moved out, maybe somebody's moved in, maybe they've just moved, a new baby in the house. There are a lot of things that can cause a cat to start spraying, but 90% of spraying issues can be resolved by having the animal spayed or neutered. Okay. Now with dogs, I have a couple of my dogs, when they're in their own yard, my dogs don't mark their territory. But that's just a natural instinct of dogs. It's kind of like, okay, they're marking territory. It's like, oh, you were here? Oh, well, I was here too. So it's kind of like leaving their calling card. It's like, I was here and you were here too. Now, some of that, if you have that problem, if we have a dog that's been at the shelter and we've had him neutered and he has, let's say that he's been marking inside his house, that is a behavior that you can correct. Sometimes it's just a matter of the dog learning, you don't do that inside your territory. Yeah. That's not, proper behavior. And so some of that can be controlled by training. Sure.
Okay, so let's, was there anything else on spaying or neutering before we get into low-cost spaying and neutering and your new relationship?
Well, I think one of the things I'd like to tell, we see 4 times as many cats as we do dogs. And I wish I had a demonstration that I could give people. If you have one unspayed cat and her offspring, in 7 years, that one cat and her offspring will be responsible for 420,000 cats. That's almost 500,000.
Yeah.
That's a lot of cats. And so think twice before you let your cat get pregnant.
Absolutely. You started before, and I'm sorry I had to cut you off on that, but I didn't want to get too far ahead and confuse people. I wanted to kind of set the stage. But we've talked a little bit about low-cost spay and neuter, and you all at the Oshkosh Area Humane Society have a relationship with, is it a Madison-based organization?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the name of it again?
It's called, well, on the forms it says Spay Me. Okay. But the organization is called Shelter from the Storm.
Shelter from the Storm. Okay.
Shelter from the Storm. And they do primarily spay, neuter surgeries. And our association with them is we are a drop-off and pickup station. And what that means is anyone wishing to have their cat or dog spayed or neutered can contact the Oshkosh Area Humane Society, come in and fill out an application. Animals are picked up on a Friday night by a van that comes up from the Madison area. They're transported down to Madison. The dogs are put into kennels. The cats are housed for the night. In the Saturday morning, those animals are spayed and neutered. They are put back into their carriers and they are transported back on Saturday afternoon and are back home with their owners on Saturday night.
Wow, very fast turnaround.
It's a very fast turnaround. With the application for it, it's very reasonable. A dog spay is $90. A dog spay and neuter is $90. Cat spay and neuter is $50, and included in that, Cheryl, is a rabies vaccination and a distemper vaccination.
Wow.
So that's pretty darn cheap.
That is.
Now, also, it's so important, again, because this is high volume, I don't want people to think that this is low quality. Before your animal has surgery, you will be talking to the veterinarian. who's going to do that surgery.
Okay.
And they'll answer any of your questions. When you fill out the form regarding having your pet spayed or neutered, you can also make arrangements to have pain medication. You can now all the animals are given some pain medication, but if you're having your dog spayed, you may want to have some additional pain medication for days down the road. The funny collars that we see the dogs wear.
Elizabethan collars,
yes. The Elizabethan
where
collars.
They bang into everything as they're walking.
And they sound like they're, and they feel like they're so disoriented. Those are available. They can also get a flea treatment if they want for their dog. There's also microchip for their dog or cat. They can also do microchipping while they have the animal there, and they also do. They also have a feral cat package. So if people in certain areas have a problem with feral cats, they can also make arrangements to have feral cats spayed and neutered at the shelter from the storm. So our partnership really is we are a drop. We help with the paperwork. People must sign up. I believe it's by the second weekend of the month, and they must be signed up and paid before their animal can go. And I can tell you, we just finished last week was the drop-off for the spay neuter for October, and I think they have November just about full.
Wow.
So, but call us or come in, and our staff will talk to you about it and see if we can get people, signed up to do that.
You mentioned about feral cats. Now, there's a question that I have. If you've got a feral cat, which is just kind of roaming around, it's a wild cat basically. Number one, how would someone go about catching a wild cat, a feral cat? And number two, how would you respond to someone saying, well, why do I want to take care of someone else's cat? Why do I want to, A, figure out how to catch a feral cat, and B, why do I want to pay for a feral cat? And C, what happens to it after it's spayed or neutered? Then what?
Right. Well, that brings us to trap, neuter, release. And trap, neuter, release is for feral cats. And there are many communities that have the trap, neuter, release program already in place. And this is something that we are working toward.
Okay.
And Madison has had a trap, neuter, release program in the Dane County area for several years now. And what that is people can trap the feral cat, they bring it in, they have it spayed or neutered, the ear is tipped, they take a little notch out of the cat's ear, and the whole idea behind trap, neuter, release is that these animals are put back where they came from. Because the truth of the matter is, if somebody cares enough to trap a feral cat, they've probably been feeding it.
Okay.
And so the whole idea behind trap, neuter, release is to maintain the colonies that are already existing. And if you have a colony, let's say that you have a colony of 8 cats, and you don't spay and neuter anybody, but you're feeding them, you're keeping them just healthy enough to breed. So all of a sudden that 8 cats is 16 cats, and then those 16 cats is 32 cats. So,
and over 7 years, it's millions of cats.
oh yes, more than we want to talk about. So the trap, neuter, release, all right, I have this colony in my area. I'm going to trap them. I'm going to have them spayed and neutered, have their ears notched. I am going to continue to feed them. I agree to be their caregiver. And in doing so, I help to maintain that colony with the idea that over time, what's going to happen to that colony if they're not reproducing?
Okay.
They will fade away.
Right.
By trapping the colony and killing all of the colony, all that's going to happen is other feral cats are going to move into that territory. So the whole idea behind trap, neuter, release is that this is a structured program where eventually the colonies will become smaller and smaller and disappear. So not everybody wants to, I'll be honest, Cheryl, I have stray cats in my neighborhood.
I've got one too.
I'm not trapping them. I choose not to. I did years ago, and I don't see that many in my neighborhood anymore right now, and I'm hoping that the one that I keep seeing, I hope that it's a neighbor's cat that I hope to talk to and, have it stay in the house. But that's the idea behind the trap, neuter, release.
Okay.
And by doing that, because you have somebody maintaining that colony and feeding, they're going to know that somebody, oh, gee, I had 7 and now all of a sudden there's 8. Okay, so there's a new guy that I have to trap. Or maybe, because what we see here at the shelter in our outlying communities is that some of the cats that are coming in that we think are wild or fractious or feral, they're somebody's house pet. And they're just so scared that when they come in, they're really not wild at all.
Yeah.
And those animals can, again, if they're not already spayed and neutered, can be spayed and neutered and can be placed into homes.
Yeah.
And isn't that what we really want? And it's unfortunate that so many times animals that are not spayed or neutered, because they're spraying, because they're exhibiting behaviors that we find undesirable, rather than bringing them to the shelter, people opt to just open the door and let them go.
Yeah.
And then that adds, again, to that pet overpopulation problem.
Okay. Well, speaking of pet overpopulation, part of this problem is brought on by puppy mills. And we're down to about 12 minutes that we have left. And so unless you had something really pressing yet on spaying and neutering, I'd kind of like to move on to puppy mills and at least get some information out there about puppy mills before we have to close out the show. There's been recent legislation in... It's been a long day. It has. Recent legislation in the state of Wisconsin on breeders that are puppy mill breeders. Can you just kind of in a nutshell tell us what that legislation does?
Hopefully it's going to make puppy mills go away. December 1st of 2009, Governor Doyle signed a bill that will regulate anyone who is breeding dogs, and that they will have to be licensed. I believe I have a copy of the bill here. It says, requires the following to obtain licensing with limited exceptions: a person who sells 25 or more dogs. So right there.
In a year or?
In a year.
Okay.
In a year. And it has different, and then it has a person who operates an auction which 50 or more dogs are offered. And so this is going to have a broad spectrum. It's going to, the Oshkosh Area Humane Society will have to get a license because we, adopt out more than 25 dogs. And so all of these, and it isn't just the licensing, it's the regulation of how these animals can be housed, how they have to be kept, that it's going to be, more monitored.
Now, you said in December of last year that bill was signed. When has it gone into effect, or when will it?
I believe it's June of 2011. The bill takes effect 18 months after it was signed into, what did they say here, enacted as a law.
That's kind of a long time, given how quickly some laws are put into place and actually
enacted. It's kind of giving people time
to gear up and...
Okay, I have to, if I'm going to continue to breed dogs, I need to clean up my act. And so those people are being given that time to kind of get their ducks in a row and to make the adjustments that they need to, and before they will come under the scrutiny of that law.
Sure. Well,
and of course also to
Go
get,
ahead.
we need to make sure that we have the people there to enforce this also.
Absolutely. Well, puppy mills, we all hear about them. Some of these dogs have ended up in shelters because they've been shut down, and shelters in the area where it was located have taken them in. You guys have taken them in before?
And this is what we're going to be bracing for. When this starts to be enforced, shelters will be overwhelmed with dogs coming from puppy mills.
What exactly, for someone who doesn't know, Cheryl, what exactly is a puppy mill? Because I think some people would be surprised by the definition of what a puppy mill is.
Well, would you mind if I just read it?
No, go right ahead.
A puppy mill is any place that animals are kept in cramped cages or pens, like chickens, and or forced to endure physical abuse in any form, poor food or not enough of it, filthy conditions, constant breeding, little attention, conditions that, as the old saying goes, you wouldn't keep a dog in, so that their owner can make more money from them, that is considered a puppy mill. It doesn't make any difference, Cheryl, if it's one breeding female or 1,000. It's important that if somebody is not breeding to benefit the breed, they are breeding for nothing but sheer profit, that is a puppy mill. And it isn't just dogs. It's cats and hamsters and birds and rabbits.
Yep.
It's all of those little creatures that we hold dear. And I hope I'm not jumping ahead, but one of the best things that anybody can do to stop puppy mills is never buy a pet from a pet store. Don't fraternize places that sell pets. Don't buy animals online. Don't buy animals that are advertised in the paper. Reputable breeders do not advertise in that way. And as far as I'm concerned, most reputable breeders, before I breed my dog, I have potential homes for those puppies before they're even born. Mm-hmm. I'm not breeding the puppies and then going, well, gosh, I wonder if I can find enough homes for them. Mm-hmm.
And there is a distinction between a responsible breeder who's doing it so that the breed doesn't become extinct, mm-hmm. and someone who is just indiscriminately breeding.
Right.
And likewise, there's also a difference, and I think we should point that out, between a puppy mill and a backyard breeder, someone who just decides they want to have their puppy or have their dog or their cat have one litter mm-hmm. of puppies or kittens before they have it spayed or neutered. Yeah. You know, that's kind of what I consider a backyard breeder. Mm-hmm. You know, they're not.
But
doing
they're still adding to the pet overpopulation.
They are, but
problem.
they are different from a puppy mill. You know, not a lot of difference, but there is a difference there because.
Right. But they're still also making a profit, Cheryl.
They are. I'm not saying they're right. Okay, yeah. I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying I would call the police or the authorities on a puppy mill. I would not call the police on a next door neighbor who's letting their dog have a litter of puppies.
Would you call the police if your neighbor was letting their dog have a litter of puppies every 6 months?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
If they were just having one litter of puppies, though, before they have I would try and talk them out of doing that.
Right. Okay.
But if they're going to do that, or sometimes before they have their pet spayed or neutered, an accident happens. It's one of those oopses,
those
oopses. And but I'm not going to call the police on that. But if I see a puppy mill, yes, I'm going to contact the authorities, or someone who's letting their pet breed every 6 months or every 9 months or whatever the case may be, once a year. Yeah, then because I feel that's
and see,
something that should not be allowed.
One of my concerns is that when people do breed their pet and they're making a profit from it, a lot of these people that are breeding their dog don't claim that as income.
Right.
And, how would you feel if you knew that somebody was, taking down $5,000 and,
I'd call the IRS too.
There we go.
That would be the second call. I'd be making.
So we're going to call the police and the Humane Society.
I'd be a busy woman on the phone. Probably not real popular with my neighbor, but because I love animals that much that I'm going to be watching out for the animals.
Well, and you know what, Cheryl? You just said something very dear to me, that you care about the animals and that it's important to you. And it's so important. People need to be a voice for the animals. So many times people call the Humane Society and they say, well, I think there's something going on, but I don't want to get involved. Somebody has to get involved. And I would encourage everybody to be that somebody. If everybody got involved, we could put an end to this. Mm-hmm. If we could put an end to the puppy mills, we could put an end to the pet overpopulation, but you can't say, well, the Humane Society should take care of it, or the police department should look into that, or Cheryl Hentz should have it on her show and talk about it. Everybody has to take a little piece of that responsibility and speak up for the animals, because if we don't speak up for the animals, they have no voice.
Right.
And so whether, some of the ways that people can help other than not buying from a pet store, help your local humane society with an ad in the paper to promote shelter animals or to promote spaying and neutering. Take out an ad yourself and promote that people should spay and neuter. I had a group of kids one year, they did a poster on spaying and neutering and put it all around the school to promote awareness. Talk to people, and if you don't know the answers of, well, why should, I don't know what to tell my friend about having their pet spayed and neutered, contact the Humane Society. We have some wonderful handouts regarding the reasons to spay and neuter your pet.
Yep.
Let us help you. But it's so important that every citizen be a voice for the animals.
Well, and we've been putting up throughout this program, we've been putting up the animal shelter's website. And I'm not sure which other one we've been putting up, but I just want to throw a couple of other websites out here before we wrap things up. There's nopuppymills.com. There's nowisconsinpuppymills.org. And if you just do a Google search of puppy mills or of no puppy mills, you're going to find these organizations. If you can't, remember the website addresses or you don't have something to write it down with. You can also go to the Humane Society of the United States' website, which is hsus.org, americanhumane.org, humanesociety.org. There's so many resources out there that you can get good information about puppy mills and what to do about them. We've tried to, put out as much information as we can tonight. And I think we should probably also make the point, Cheryl, too, that, if someone makes a call to an authority and they say, I'm not sure that this is a puppy mill. The fact that, and we've talked about this earlier today, the fact that they think that there might be a problem that prompts them to call suggests to us that indeed there probably is
Trust
a problem.
your gut.
And if they don't want to point the finger at someone because it might be a client or a neighbor or what have you, or even a relative, you can always, have your name kept confidential.
Right. You can ask them that you want to stay, anonymous. But in a lot of cases, it's very helpful for law enforcement to have the name of, who reported this, dates and times
in case they need to go back to you later.
Yes, exactly.
And get more information.
But law enforcement is there to help both sides, and I can understand, in some instances people would be hesitant to come forward. But again, I can't stress enough, the animal has no voice. And I would rather err on the side of the animal than to say, well, I never did anything, and oh, geez, I was right.
Yep.
I should have said something. So it's really better to speak up and say, gee, I'm sorry, but, because sometimes, conditions, those people probably still need to maybe change a situation that an animal is living in. Maybe it's not horrific, but maybe it's something, if you can make the living conditions better for that animal, wouldn't you want to do that?
Absolutely. And on that note, we're going to have to wrap it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
it's
thank you very
always
much.
so wonderful to have you guys here.
Well, thank you.
You do such a fine job. The Oshkosh Area Humane Society, check out Happy Tales, oahs.org is your website address, and lots of good information out there. So anyway, that's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.